Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to you all today, and thank you for joining ISAC and Elsevier for this expert-led session focused on practical, actionable guidance for publishing high-quality antimicrobial research. My name is Andrea Hoogenkamp-O'Brien, and I'm the Senior Publishing Director within the Health and Medical Journals Group at Elsevier. I work leading a global team focused on journal strategy and society partnerships, and have been here for more than 17 years, and the last 15 with Elsevier, and I'm based in Amsterdam. Over the next hour, you'll hear the latest developments in scientific publishing from Elsevier, gain insights on how to publish successfully in the International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents directly from the Editor-in-Chief, and learn what journals look for in strong submissions with editorial perspectives from the Journal of Global Antimicrobial Resistance. We're thrilled to bring this level of expertise, and we hope today's discussion supports you in taking your research further. Over to you, Marco.
Good morning to everyone. Thank you very much to ISAC for the invitation to share this webinar. Well, very briefly, I want to present you. I share my screen. Some slides focusing on the activity of the International Society of Antimicrobial Chemotherapy. This is a society that has been founded in a lot of years ago, in the 1961. Today we have more than 100 affiliated member societies all around the world. So this society has a global impact because it includes in the society a lot of local society from several nations. The aim is to increase the knowledge on antimicrobial chemotherapy and to combat the antimicrobial resistance around the world. This is the actual executive committee of the society. Our president is Suha Kanshi from Lebanon. The president-elect is Aynam Warten from the Netherlands. There are a lot of very distinguished colleagues from several areas of the world in the executive committee as executive committee members. Every second year, we organize a Congress of the Society. This year, this Congress will be organized in Manila, in the Philippines. It's a 3-day Congress with a great scientific program. So we encourage every attendee, all the attendees of this webinar to check for the program of the Congress and also to participate if they have the opportunity, because this is a really high-level Congress from the scientific point of view, with a lot of interaction between the participants. And also the video will be very, very nice with the organization of the Philippine Society for Microbiology and Infectious Disease. We have 2 journals. The society has 2 journals that you all know, and today we will discuss more in depth, which are the policy of the journals and also the possibility to publish in this journal, the International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents and the Journal of Global Antimicrobial Resistance. The ISAC has some active working groups. There are a lot of working groups. As you see, the list is very, we have a lot of topics from the pharmacology to fungal infection, bacterial infection, diagnostics, microlab, also infection in displaced population. So there is the possibility for the members to apply and to participate to this working group. We have also an academy, ISAC Academy, that is a very important education program of the society. Accessing to the website of ISAC Academy, you can find some webinars, including the webinar that we are doing today, can be seen in the Academy. We put on the site publication, podcasts, videos, and also an e-learning machine. So it's a very good opportunity to have a free education, free webinars and e-modules. We have also produced an ISAC antibiotics guide that can be you can access to this website. And also the society endorsed APWA. APWA is the Alliance for the Prudent Use of Antibiotics, is a very good initiative with a board of members, of colleagues that produce antibiotic cards, very useful in the clinical practice, publication, newsletters, and also some webinars that has been organized with APWA. So as you see, the set is very active, has a lot of opportunities to the members, to all the people that want to follow our activities. These are the social network link on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, X, and also the email of our secretary, organizing secretary, for any ideas and for future collaboration. So Andrea, I give you the I give you the talk to present the first speaker.
I'd like to introduce you to Caroline Moores, who is an executive publisher in my group at Elsevier. She is responsible for a list of infectious disease journals, including the ISAC journals IJAA and JGAR. Based in Amsterdam, Caroline brings over 15 years journals publishing experience, having previously worked at Sage and Emerald Publishing in the UK. And Caroline's talk will be on the publisher's view, latest developments in the publishing industry. Caroline.
Well, thank you so much. So my name is Caroline Moores. I'm the exec publisher at Elsevier in the Health and Medical Sciences division. So I work with Professor Li and Professor Tsakris on the journals IJAA and JGAR. So I'm very happy to be here today to talk through, before they go into kind of giving tips and tricks and hints for how to help you successfully publish in those journals. I'm just going to look briefly into some of the recent trends in scholarly publishing. And I'm going to focus in on two topics for today's talk. So the first of those is research integrity and publishing ethics. So a very brief whistle-stop tour of looking at some of the common ethical pitfalls that even the most well-intentioned researchers fall into. And then the second topic will be artificial intelligence. So looking at how we can use it, how it can enhance your work as authors, as well as some of the pitfalls and things to look out for. So jumping straight in to research integrity and publishing ethics. Here is a list of the top 10 ethics pitfalls that researchers sometimes go down. So if you're new to research, publishing research, or even if you're an accomplished, well-published researcher or clinician, it's really important and integral to be aware of some of these. Some of them you may have heard of already. So I'm not going to go through each one in detail. But at the top, you can see things like missing documentation and declarations, usually as part of the submission process for most journals. IJAA and JGAR use Editorial Manager. So as part of that submission process, you'll usually be asked to declare things like conflicts of interest, funding acknowledgements, making sure you have all the appropriate forms, ethical consents, for example. So make sure all of that is included as part of your submission to help speed up the submission process. Matters of authorship, which I'll go into in a moment. We often see author disputes arising. Inappropriate use of Gen AI, and again, I'll go on to talk about that in a moment. There are the more common, things like image manipulation, falsifying data, plagiarism. You're probably all very much aware of. So it's obviously not appropriate to reuse other researchers' text or images, figures, without the appropriate permission or appropriate citations. So that's probably the most common issue that we see. And then things like citation manipulation, duplicate submission. So again, you should not be submitting your paper to 2 journals at a time. And then lastly, the one I won't go into today, we'll do a whole webinar on it, but involvement with the predatory journals and paper mills. So just to flag that most journals, including IJAA and JGAR, the editors do have access to plagiarism detection software. So this is where the manuscripts that you submit can be screened and then checked against previously published content to make sure that it's not been published already. We also have checks now for duplicate and simultaneous submissions. So in a similar way, we use AI tools to scan the title abstracts of submitted papers to check that they don't match previously submitted content or even published content. So please make sure that you only submit to one journal at a time, and make sure once you submit that your paper goes through the whole submission process with a final decision before you consider taking it to another journal. That doesn't apply to preprints. Authorship disputes is something to be aware of before you even submit to the paper. Before you even submit your paper to a journal, you want to be completely clear alongside all of your co-authors. Firstly, who are the authors that should be attributed to the paper, who made a significant contribution to the paper and should be listed, and then agree the order of authors and who should be the corresponding author. That will be usually the person that communicates with the journal through the editorial process. So make sure that all of this is correct and agreed with all authors before you even submit, because usually you can't change authors or the order of authors after submission without approval from the editor, and most journals actually don't allow any author changes after acceptance. And one thing to be aware of as an author is that gift and purchase of authorship are a definite no-no, so they are really not in line with ethical policies. So if you're ever approached to be an author and offered payment, or similarly if someone wants to pay you to be listed as an author, you should definitely steer clear of any of this kind of ethical malpractice. And compliance with Gen AI policies. One of the questions we do get asked more and more these days, as with the explosion of AI and tools like ChatGPT, is whether ChatGPT can be listed as an author. And the clear answer to that is no. So authors should not list AI and AI-assisted technologies as an author, and you also shouldn't cite AI as an author either. Our definition of authorship implies responsibilities that can only be attributed and performed by humans. So again, this is something to be aware of. I know that more and more people are using AI in their work, and that is okay. But there are certain rules and policies that need to be adhered to. So I'd recommend before you submit to any journal and before you submit your work to IJAA and JGAR, please do go to the Guide for Authors on the journal website, and you will see kind of clear definitions and links to policies around things like AI, links to information on ethics, and I'll share some links later in the chat as well that hopefully you'll find of use as an author. So that leads me into the next part of the presentation. So thinking about artificial intelligence and using generative AI in the publishing process. So there are, of course, many pitfalls again and things to watch out for when it comes to AI. We are seeing an increasing number of papers being submitted that have been generated and produced by AI tools. Obviously, that's something that as publishers we're working hard to then try and detect. At the moment, there isn't a tool that can accurately always detect the use of AI in papers that have been submitted, but it's definitely something that the whole publishing industry and publishers are working hard to do. We have a dedicated team of ethics experts at Elsevier, so they're working on tools like this and ways that we can use AI to enhance the submission and publication process, but also in our ethics team looking at ways to detect ethical malpractice. So as well as pitfalls, there's obviously ways that AI can also benefit and enhance and advance research and clinical workflows. So really at all points of the research and publication process, it can be used in a way that is positive. Of course, it can also be misused, but this slide just focuses on some of the ways that it can be used for your benefit. So as authors, co-authors, collaborators, of course, you can use AI tools in the research process. So whether that's specific research tools, whether it's using AI to help with data management and analysis, coding, clinical trials. It is also possible to use AI in content preparation when it comes to things like early steps, brainstormings, and outline. Also improving of text, so things like spell checkers have obviously been around for a very long time. It can also help with reference management and improving of images, for example. The main thing to note with the use of AI, and I'll go on to look at our AI policies in a moment, is essentially that if you have used AI in preparation of your manuscript, that it should always be fully disclosed. And I think the same with any kind of ethical pitfall that you could potentially fall into. Transparency really is key. So please do always disclose the use of AI when preparing your manuscript. For editors, reviewers, and publishers like us, of course, we are using AI more and more to enhance the editorial process and the peer review process. So things like ethics checks, which I've already mentioned, so those plagiarism checks, and checks for things like duplicate submissions, for example, that's using AI-assisted technology. And yeah, mostly we are using it for research integrity purposes. But it can also help benefit editors with things like reviewer searches. So if an editor is receiving your paper and needs to help with finding reviewers to review that paper, they can use reviewer searches using keywords, which will pull in suggestions that could review your paper. And then again, as authors, researchers, clinicians, when you're using published content, you can use AI to help with promotional content. So drafting a copy for socials and marketing, podcasts, for example, but also in discovery and search and the reading and organizing of literature, and as well in your teaching and learning. So these are just some of the many ways in which it can be used, to benefit the publication process. And I did just want to include our generative AI author policies. So this is listed on our website. It's also linked to in all of the author guidelines, and it's relevant for IJAA and JGAR as well. So Elsevier's policy does state that authors should only use AI tools for support and never as a substitute for human critical thinking. And that's also the case for our editors. So when we have things like plagiarism checking tools and ethics checks, there is always a human editor or person that is, giving those oversight and making any final decisions. So these tools are used to support us, but not to replace human decisions. As I've said before, and I'll say it again, it's really important that if you do use AI tools in your manuscript preparation, that should be disclosed at the point of submission. So that's not relevant for things like a spell checker and things, but if you've actually used it to help develop and produce the manuscript. AI, as I've said, it shouldn't be listed as an author, and it shouldn't replace authors or co-authors, and you cannot cite AI as an author. And please make sure that you also check the terms and conditions of any AI tool that you use to ensure that privacy and confidentiality of the data and input is adhered to. So this hopefully is helpful. You can find it on our website and then the journal guide for authors. We do also have similar policies for reviewers, for editors, and for journals as a whole. So they're obviously constantly evolving as the whole landscape around Gen AI evolves as well. And finally, just to look briefly at how Elsevier is using AI, I've already touched on quite a few of these already. So as I've said, we can use it for reviewer recommendations for editors, as well as ethics checks for editors. As authors, you're also supported with potentially finding a suitable journal to submit to. Hopefully, as you're all in this webinar, you're all interested in submitting to IJAA and JGAR, but we do have a journal finder tool where you can upload your abstract, and it helps to find a suitable journal. And similarly, if you are just rejected from a paper, we have tools that help to find another suitable home for your journal through the Transfer Your Manuscript tool. Automated checks on a paper at the point of submission also help to identify missing items. So hopefully it should clear up any of those kind of missing conflicts of interest or other items, files that you really need to include in the submission. So that can help, again, save time and avoid being rejected further down the line. And yes, as I've said, AI-based research integrity checks are one of the main ways in which we're using it. So there are ways that it helps to enhance and benefit us. It also helps to inspire and enable us to experiment with additional innovative functionalities. So I did just want to point out a tool called LeapSpace. So it's included at the bottom of the slide. So this is, some of you may have heard of or even used Science Direct AI and Scopus AI. So essentially these have now become a LeapSpace, and it can support you as a researcher across the whole workflow. In your research and in publication. So if you want to kind of read and identify relevant literature, if you want to ask questions, it draws in content from Science Direct and from Scopus. So that's publisher neutral. It's across all journals that are included in the index. You can ask it any question or prompt, and it will pull in findings and research from across all of that content. So rather than just looking at one particular article, you can scan and potentially read multiple in one go. So please do look at LeakSpace if you're interested. And then just to finish my last slide before I hand over to the editors, they're going to go through really specific tips on how to get published in IJAA and JGAR. But we do have a lot of resources online. So our Researcher Academy site, as well as elsevier.com/authors. I'll put these links in the chat. They help with understanding the whole publishing process and all of the information and a lot more that we've gone through today, tips on how to write, submit, get published, promote your research, that's all included, as well as information on ethics and open access, all the different definitions, things like that. So please do go online and have a look at those sites. So with that, I'm going to just thank you all for listening. My email's included there. If you have any questions, or please pop them in the Q&A. And with that, thanks for listening, and I'll hand back to the panel.
Caroline, thank you very much for your beautiful presentation. We have just two questions from the audience that I read on the chat. One colleague from India, he said that he work in a very limited resource country, and he said many times we are forced to withdraw our manuscript due to the high APC charge. Does IJAA JGAR provide full APC waivers or special consideration for researchers from financially constrained institutions?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So both journals operate slightly differently. So with IJAA, it's what's known as a hybrid journal. So you can submit and publish under the subscription model, or authors can choose to publish their work through the Gold Open Access route. Usually that is through payment of from their funder or institute, generally, of the Gold Open Access fee. For JGAR, it is a fully Gold Open Access journal. So all papers will be published Gold Open Access through payment of that fee. However, we do have a generous waiving and discount policy. So for JGAR, it's included in our Research for Life program, whereby authors from lower middle income countries are usually entitled to discounts, or in some cases full waivers. It really depends on the country in which the authors are coming from. So I'll put links to that in the chat after this. So yeah, please do check the website and look at the guide for authors. Every journal does have an open access information page, so it should have more information on the APC if you are looking to publish open access, as well as any potential waiver information.
And Andrea, I don't know if you want to take the chair there, but we have other two questions. One is using Grammarly to correct grammar during manuscript writing should be disclosed during submission. I think no, but Caroline.
Yeah, no. So the basic spelling and grammar checks you don't need to disclose, but if you're using AI tools to help kind of generate content in any way, or for more in-depth purposes, that should be disclosed.
Okay, and David, you can could you mind if individual reach, trap, email, or any social media handles for more exploration, please? Thank you.
Yes, sure. We can share those with the viewers, with the slides.
Okay. I think that we have to go forward. Thank you so much, Caroline.
Thanks.
And it's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Jian Li, that is the Editor-in-Chief of the International Journals of Antimicrobial Agents and an elected fellow of the Australian Academy of Science, Australian Academy of Health and Medical Science, and the American Academy of Microbiology. He leads the Laboratory of Antimicrobial System Pharmacology at the Monash Biomedicine Discovery Institute, Melbourne, Australia. His research focused on antimicrobial pharmacology and drug discovery, highlighted by the development of a novel antimicrobial lipopeptide advanced from concept to clinical trials. Professor Li served as an invited reviewer for more than 200 international journals and over 35 funding agencies worldwide. The talk title is How to Publish High-Impact Antimicrobial Research Successfully in International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents. Please, Jian, it's up to you.
Thank you, Marco. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So in the next 15 minutes, I will present some tips on how to publish in your high-impact antimicrobial research in IJAA. So first question is why choose IJAA? An editor-in-chief, I'm very proud to say, it is one of the top journals in antimicrobial chemotherapy. And based on the Clarivate ranking, IJAA has been a Q1 journal over the last 5 years in infectious diseases, microbiology, pharmacology, and pharmacy. And I'm not an impact factor person, but impact factor is important for the journal. And you can say over the last few years, IJAA has maintained the highest impact factor in the top antimicrobial chemotherapy journals. This slide just show you very briefly the submissions over the years. You can see in the last 5 years, the submission increased almost like 1/3 from 2021. And we are reaching almost like 2,100 submissions a year. And the rejection rate is around 90%, including a high percentage of deaths rejection. So this really to make the review process more efficient. So how to get your paper into the review process is critical. So there are many common reasons for deaths rejecting a manuscript, and you can say, but the most important things I want to highlight is really about the novelty and also impact. So for example, if you discovered a new resistant mechanism in a local hospital, but if you just publish like this, it may not be very impactful. However, if you can put your isolates into the global contents, and that may really make your paper more impactful. So I just want to highlight, you definitely can design great study which show the impact and the novelty of your paper. To do this, I think I have been trying to keep the journal as open as possible. For me, I don't mind too much about the manuscript organization or language, because as clearly we can see from figures, from tables, the quality of the research. So of course, if you can improve English and have a beautiful structure, that's perfect. But other than that, I think I'm very open. I think the science comes first. But on top of this, there are two things we have to pay attention to. The first one is the ethics issues, as Karen just did a great job in the first talk. And also another one is a plagiarism. Some also may not really realize, even you copy paste the methods wording from your another paper in a different journal that called self-plagiarism. So people can get a little bit annoyed by this when they receive a letter from a journal, but actually be very careful with copy pasting. That's not acceptable. So the key point for this talk is really about how can we get publication in IJAA. The short answer is you have to tell an impactful and cool story. And basically, you need to have a wow factor there. And to expand this, we expect the study can really meaningfully advance antimicrobial science or clinical practice. That's really important for IJAA. To do that, it's very, very important to make sure you can highlight the novelty and impact of your papers. I know some lots of clinical papers, particularly for those retrospective research. Sometimes, if you just include a cohort patient and do the retrospective kind of prospective kind of studies, and that may not be very novel. I think if you could consider a specific cohort patient, consider PK/PD of the drug, and think about a mechanistic reasons that can make your study more attractive. But the most important thing is really about scientific rigor. From time to time, our editor can point out, the scientific rigor of your submission is not ideal. And some also may got a little bit annoyed by this, but actually this is really neutral. It doesn't mean we criticize your paper, but we really evaluate the paper based on the scientific quality. If there really are major issues with the study design, no matter the aims or whether this is a hypothesis-driven research design, I think there are lots of things you need to consider how you can make your study sound. I can give you an example. There are lots of submissions. They investigate a herbal extract on their antibacterial activity, but because they're not a pure compound, it's very difficult to draw the conclusion from study. So that's a typical example for poor scientific rigor. So we have to think about how your data can be extrapolated, can draw the conclusion. That's very, very important. And of course, how you organize your results and also how you do discussion, that's very, very important. I will explain this a little bit late. In later slides. So how can we get your work published? I think there are several things you have to consider. For example, once we see your submission, usually we can fairly quickly tell from graphic abstract and also the figure and table and discussion about the quality of your submission. Since I took the editor-in-chief position, I introduced the graphic abstract. I think we can clearly tell how the authors can understand the significance of their findings by presenting a graphic abstract. That tells a lot. So if you could have a really accurate and attractive graphic abstract, that's very, very important. And the figures and tables to really tell the quality of your research. So I will tell a little bit more in the next few slides. So firstly, for the title. Title is critical for the start of the manuscript, and wow factor play a key role here. But the key thing is you have to make sure your title accurately reflect your study, and also don't use a really technical jargon or already used abbreviations, because you want people to easily grasp, what your study about. So keep all these kind of tips in mind for title. And the most important thing regarding title, you have to make sure it's accurate, as I mentioned. Don't use any really strange title which doesn't make sense. So this is really important. And for keywords, usually lots of people just choose keywords from their title, which is not right. Keywords are really useful down the track. People can search your papers. I think a basic principle for keywords is, they should reflect your research, but also importantly, try to use the important words on your study, but not in the title. For example, so this is a published IJAA paper, and when the author choose the keywords, they use the gene expression, transcriptomics, and polymyxin, which is really not shown in the title. This means they got a high chance when people search their keywords and they can find this paper. Usually the title is very easy to do this. Use the words from title very easy to do the search, but keywords, they're also very important. For abstract, I say abstract, usually people write abstract at the end. Abstract should be brief and also should be really accurate to summarize the key findings and the significance of research. So abstract is usually is the first thing we read submission. So don't pretty carefully check your abstract and try to avoid any typographic errors, etc., because that's not good for the initial impression. And when people prepare this kind of abstract, I would strongly recommend you put your figures and table together, think about the overall story, and then write an accurate abstract at the end, rather than think about the abstract at the very beginning. And to write a paper, I think you need lots of thinking in it, not just English. I think with AI support you, I think English may not be a critical, but of course, for accuracy is very important, right? But of course, I think the critical thing is how you can tell the story. So as I mentioned early on, it's important to write paper from figures and tables, because that can really help you think about what are the cool stories you want to tell in this paper. And then you can put methods, results, and discussion together. Discussion is also very, very important. It really reflects how you think about results. And a lot of discussions really are written in a superficial way, which is not good. And that really reflects people thinking about the results. But on top of this, I think for conclusion and introduction, that's relatively easier. But for the title, abstract keyword I mentioned, they have to be really accurate, reflect your research findings, and try to think about a wow factor when you prepare the title I mentioned early on, because that's really important to deliver your impactful and cool story. They're really an essential element for a good paper. For the introduction, I think everyone understands introduction is about background, but it's also very important to identify the knowledge gap in the current literature. So if you fail to identify knowledge gap, it's not good for people to think about the impact of your study, the novelty of your study. So I think for the introduction, you have to identify the knowledge gap and how your work fill the gap or push the front line of the field. So that's a very, very important. And for introduction, I think a lot of people think, well, maybe I can reuse the introduction, for example, antimicrobial resistance, background, etc., from one paper to another. But I would encourage you to really start from new ideas and write them from scratch. So don't copy paste from different papers. For the methods, I think it's relatively easier, as long as you can provide the essential details of your research. People can reproduce your data if needed. That should be fine. But one key thing is you have to think about, don't spend too much to write those methods already published. You certainly can cite the previous papers, but also would be useful to briefly mention the key element of the method, even published. So don't copy and paste the methods, as I mentioned early on. That could be a self-plagiarism risk. And some authors really surprised when we mentioned this in the letter. And as Caroline mentioned, the ethics is essential. If your work involved animal studies or clinical studies, anything related to ethics, you have to be very, very careful. Definitely to include all the essential information there. For the results, I think the results is very, I think for many people, results are very straightforward, because if you have a logical order, you can present your result in a logical way. But I will suggest here is really highlight the main finding of your research, and particularly for those unexpected findings, because that's really, lots of really exciting findings, really not expected. So I think how you can write them out in an attractive way can clearly help your submission. And on top of this, it is also very important to think about statistical analysis. Different type of analysis can really help you to match the data and to get most out of the data. And sometimes you really have some really exciting findings when you conduct some proper statistical analysis. So that's very important. And discussion. I think discussion is one of the most critical part. And a lot of people just repeat the results, which is not good. I think the discussion should be, what the data mean and where your findings are in the current literature. And that's very important. Definitely, when you consider discussion, you have to make sure each data set has their own caveat. You can't extrapolate your data too much beyond the caveat. So the statement you write has to be supported, actually supported by the data. So that's very important. And for conclusion, a lot of people think conclusion is just a summary of your result, but actually they're not right. Concluding section is your last opportunity to highlight the impact and significance of your paper. So don't treat it as a summary. And finally, like acknowledgement, you have to include all the key elements there. And for references, I just want to highlight, don't try to use too many references. Some people said, I needed to cite 80 references, but actually you can just cite those critical ones, particularly if you have some original research, cite that paper rather than review, because citing reference can also reflect your understanding of the literature. So to finish up, as Karen mentioned, there are lots of tools at Elsevier website, and you can use to help prepare your manuscript. And I'm sure you have found this web link very useful. So finally, I would like to finish up by saying I try to maintain a culture of openness and transparency in the IJAA editorial decisions. Whenever you have a question, feel free to email us. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Jian. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce Professor Athanasios Tsakris, who is the Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of Global Antimicrobial Resistance. He's been the Professor of Microbiology at the Medical School of the University of Athens since 2006. And he graduated from the Medical School of Athens and received postgraduate training in clinical microbiology at North Middlesex University Hospital and the Central Public Health Laboratory in London. He's a fellow in medical microbiology and virology of the Royal College of Pathologists, London, and has served as a visiting professor at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Centre in Boston. He has also been a scientific advisory board member in the EU for research on antimicrobial resistance and acted as an evaluator of research programs in several organizations. And he's going to speak today about what journal editors look for, and these are insights from the Editor-in-Chief of JGAR. Over to you, Athan.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction, Andrea, and thank you, ISAC and Elsevier, for giving us the opportunity to present our two journals. And thank you, the audience, and all the colleagues from all around the world for attending this webinar, this ISAC webinar. So I will try to give a short presentation of the JGAR, the other journal of ISAC, and to give firstly an historical overview for those of our colleagues that are not very familiar with JGAR. So JGAR is an official journal owned by the National Society of Antimicrobial Chemotherapy, the well-known ISAC. It was founded in 2013, and Professor Stefani was its editor-in-chief for all these years from 2013 up to 2024. And Stefania has established JGAR as a respected, well-known and promising journal in the field of antimicrobial resistance through all these years. So in JGAR, all professionals aiming to track the resistance threat worldwide and working in different fields, like in various research fields on antimicrobial resistance, in various healthcare facilities such as clinical microbiologists, ID doctors, ICU practitioners, the antimicrobial stewardship program teams, and those working in the so-called One Health approach in the environmental, animal, and people infection control. We published quite a lot of papers related to the One Health approach. In all our issues, you can see that quite a few papers are related to their own health. Just to have an idea of the type of papers, so JGAR covers the key topics related to antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, and antiparasitic resistance to diverse types of papers. And here you can see the different types of papers that you can submit to the JGAR. You can submit original research articles up to 1,500 words, short communications, letters to the editor, reviews, systematic reviews or meta-analysis also are welcome to JGAR, but also we have two specific types of papers. The one is the so-called genome notes. Genome notes has been introduced from Stefania quite a few years ago. In this section, which is a very successful section in JGAR, we present next generation sequencing data of antimicrobial resistance of special interest. We'll talk a bit later more specifically about genome nodes. And the next one is the hot topics. It's discussion, short articles that they discuss global or regional antimicrobial resistant issues. Mostly they are invited papers, but unsolicited articles are also welcome. And we can also evaluate and assess this kind of articles. Also, just to have an idea about the structure of JGAR, we have 12 sections with section editors in difference with other journals, and that usually they have editors or associate editors. In JGAR, we have introduced the section editors, so all our editors belong to one of our section editors. You can see here the 12 sections, the ones that about antimicrobial resistance mechanisms and epidemiology, resistome and proteome. The other is about clinical studies and antimicrobial stewardship, about antimicrobial resistance detection and diagnostics, resistance to disinfectants, microbicides, and biofilm, PKPD studies and prediction of efficacy, surveillance studies of resistant pathogens from different hosts and environments, resistance and spread in animal and environment. Here we can see that we have a lot of papers related to the One Health approach. Antiviral resistance, antifungal, antiparasitic resistance, resistance in Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and also genome notes. It's a special section in our journal, and we use special section editors. We are publishing interesting antimicrobial resistance genomes. I have an idea about the structure and the peer review workflow of the paper. As we have dual structure. We have the editor-in-chief and approximately 45 section editors with defined subject expertise. So when you submit a paper to the JGAR, articles are assigned to the editor-in-chief, who can make desk decision, rejection, or assign them to the appropriate section editor. The section editor also can perform desk decision. He or she can also reject the paper immediately or assign the paper to external reviewers. Usually, 2 external reviewers are assigned, but it depends from the section editor. There is also always the possibility to assign a paper to more than 2 external reviewers. After the review process, the section editor's recommendations are returned back to the editor-in-chief for the final decision, and the official decision is communicated through the JGAR editorial office. The editorial office checks that everything is properly presented, and then the official decision is made by the editorial office of the journal. Here we can see the processing of submissions, some highlights from the last year, from 2025. JGAR has received 989 articles. We had an increase in submissions 90% and 229 articles published, 29% more in 2025. Articles that do not reach the required quality standards can be rejected, as we said before, by the editor-in-chief or the assigned section editor, is a so-called desk rejection. Without external peer review, almost 50% of the submitted articles are rejected by the editor-in-chief or by the section editor, and the total rejection rate after the whole evaluation with external reviewers, it's up to 71% according to our last estimation, and over 1.2 million article views, downloads were done in 2025, 30% increase. And the review process is being accelerated also. Desk decision we have within 5 days, and first review decision in no more than 2 weeks is something that we are trying in collaboration with the section editors to have the first decision in no more than 2 weeks for the colleagues that submit their papers in JGAR. Also, we have a minus 32% decrease in median days from submission to first standard decision, which is 48 days, and also a decrease in the final editorial outcome by 25% during the last year. The impact factor slightly has been decreased to 3.2 in line with competition. It's a Q2 journal. It's 43rd in infectious diseases, 126th in pharmacology and pharmacy. And you can see here more specifically, as provided by Elsevier, submissions, editorial outcomes, and published counts with a blue color in the first figure. We can see the submitted papers. You can see here that the submitted papers has been increased in the last 2 years. We had 780 submissions in 2023. It's going up to 832 in 2014 and up to 989 in 2025. And you can see also that the number of papers that published online has also increased quite a lot, from 145 to 178, and then with the 229 the last year in 2025. Also, we can see in the second figure the rejection rate of the journal. The last years is more or less the same. In 2023, as you can see, more or less 50% during the last years, 50% of the papers they are rejected. We have desk rejection, and more or less 20% of the papers are rejected through the review process. So more or less 30% of the submitted papers are published in JGAR. Just to give now a short explanation, Jian also has mentioned about the reasons for desk rejections. More or less are the same in JGAR like in the International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents. So one of the reasons is inconsistency with the aim and scope of JGAR. A paper that is submitted to JGAR has to be to have an inconsistent with the aim and the scope of the journal. The weak contribution to the literature is something also that always should be taken into account. Methodological concerns about the paper. Non-transparency of data and genomic sequences also is something that the colleagues that submit a paper to JGAR have to have in mind. Poorly written article, generalities in writing, it's something that unfortunately we can see quite often in some submissions, often seen in papers AI generated. Caroline mentioned about AI, how we can use AI. AI should be used only to help to improve our paper and not to generate our paper. We can see quite obviously sometimes that papers that are submitted, they have a lot of generalities that have been generated through the artificial intelligence. And also the poor organization of clarity of the whole manuscript is another reason that a paper can be rejected, it can be desk rejected. So now what are we looking overall in JGAR? Of course, novelty through a proper methodology and design is the main thing that we can, all of us, the section editors and myself, we are trying to find in a paper that is submitted. As we said before, relevance to JGAR aim and scope. JGAR is looking for impactful and novel contributions that add to the existing knowledge and expand our understanding of antimicrobial resistance. The design is something very important. It should be appropriate and well justified, the study design of the article. Accurate and transparent data and methodology. It's also something that always we try to make clear, and we have to check carefully that the methodology is accurate and transparent. Results interpreted in a way that clearly make sense and a clear story. The whole presentation of your paper, of your work, of your study, we may have done a lot of experiments, but you have to present in a way that make a clear story and a clear contribution to our knowledge. I would like also to mention that in JGAR, regional originality is also well designed and executed in our journal. So regional contributions are also welcome if they are well designed and well executed studies. So understanding editorial expectations increases acceptance changes and reduces desk rejection risk. So if you keep in mind all this information, of course, you have much more possibilities your paper to be accepted in JGAR. Some now tips for successful submission, starting from the title and abstract. Ancient Greeks were saying, well begun is half done. At the JGAR, the first elements section editors and reviewers see are the title and abstract, of course. They must be clear, concise, informative, and engaging. The title should accurately represent the study, but also capture attention and suggest novelty. So always is important. And a nice title is something that you have to know. It's very important also in order your paper later on, if it is accepted, to be cited in the literature. A well-written abstract communicates the purpose, methods, key findings, and significance of the submission. Is also something that colleagues that submit the papers, they have to know. And together, the title and the abstract, they shape the first impressions and motivate editors and reviewers to positively engage and review the entire paper. If you have a nice abstract that present new findings in a logical way, you have much more possibilities, your paper, to go through the review process and finally to be accepted in JGAR. Tips for successful submission, introduction, aim of the study. I think Jian mentioned quite a lot about that. So it has to formulate a clear research question, and you have to ensure a thorough understanding of the relevant literature. Sometimes the colleagues that submit a paper, they don't provide a clear understanding of the relevant literature. Just to go also about the full flow of the paper, Jian also mentioned about the flow of the paper. The good text flow is something very important. You have to ensure a clear, logical progression of ideas and the interpretation of results. Reviewers have to be helped to follow the steps of the research in a logical way. It's something very important to have a logical way of presenting your data. Generalities add no value and weaken the credibility of your work. Tables and figures should support the story of your study, and references use the most relevant and those that really support the statements of your study, of your results and your discussion. Just to mention briefly that JGAR supports global representation. We support representation of low-income countries. Its aim is to ensure global representation of AMR evidence. However, common challenges in low and middle-income country submissions, gaps, it's something that we have seen quite often, gaps in methodology, design, data analysis, presentation. So international collaborations, they have to ask for the national collaborations to help ensure that studies from developing countries meet the publication standards and improve visibility of regional antimicrobial resistance trends. We want to have data from regional trends, but they have to be presented in a logical way. The data analysis presentation should be in the right way. Genome notes, as we mentioned before, is a specific section in JGAR with great interest, has dedicated section, as we said before. In this section, we have a lot of submissions about bacteriology, but we are also welcoming novel genome sequences dealing with resistance from viruses, funguses, and parasites are also welcome. Key topics of special interest in JGAR, we are welcoming papers dealing specifically about antiviral and antifungal agents, PKPD studies. We need more papers in these specific areas, experimental and clinical therapeutics, observational and clinical trials, meaningful position papers, systematic reviews and meta-analysis on the microbial resistant issues is also something that is very welcome and will be processed in our journal. So just to finish, to present the reasons why one researcher, one scientist has to publish with JGAR. What does this mean for your work? I found some reasons like the recognized leadership. ISAC journals, both journals are widely recognized and respected within the AMR scientific community. Visibility. The ISAC journals have a global reach. Your research is seen by scientists worldwide. High quality and efficient review. Networking opportunities. We have this opportunity connected with researchers working in the latest antimicrobial resistance developments. And of course, an impactful research reaches key stakeholders but also contribute to the global advancement of microbial sciences. It's something also that you have to keep in mind when you are interested to submit in our journals and specifically to JGAR. So with this final slide, sorry that the last slides, I did a short presentation of the last slides, but always you have the possibility to send questions and we can discuss different topics. You can send questions to our journal, to the email in our journal in JGAR, and then I will receive your questions, and always I have the possibility to discuss and to give the best way how you can go through our journal and submit successfully your paper to our ISAC journals in collaboration, of course, with Elsevier. Elsevier supports a lot the whole process of JGAR.
Thank you very much to all the attendees, and thank you very much to our speaker for your great job. We have now an idea on how our journals are available to receive papers of a high level, of a very well structured. So this webinar was very useful, I think, for all the people that want to publish their articles, and it was a great opportunity to meet the editor-in-chief of two such important journals and to have some important insight in the future articles that they want to publish. I give you the talk, Andrea, for the final conclusion salutation. So thank you so much. Andrea, it's up to you.
In view of time as well, I'd just like to thank our speakers. I think we've all gained some valuable insights here and what we should take into consideration before submitting our paper. And as mentioned already, do feel free to reach out to those journal email inboxes if you want to discuss things further. Slides will be shared and the recording will be shared later so that you can all review again. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.